Hi, this is Kurt Barone, and welcome to another edition of Fire Law Roundup. The next case we've got is this one is troubling for me. It comes out of the Atlanta Fire Department. I say it's troubling because I'm familiar with Atlanta's internal affairs folks, and they're very well trained. They're very skilled. They have professional investigators who handle these types of complaints. But the allegation is here that a female recruit, and I'm going to do a lot of speculating here because the complaint doesn't give us all the details, but she started the academy in August of 22, and in the February of 23 now, she's still in the academy. So I'm assuming they're done with the fire part of it. She's in the EMS part of the academy, and they've got a chief who's in his 70s, which I think is a little bit unusual. Folks still working in their 70s in a major metro fire department, who's been with the department for decades, apparently took some sort of a romantic or sexual interest in her, and did some, made some inappropriate comments, touched her inappropriately, made her feel uncomfortable. And then she complained, and the complaints went nowhere. And the reason I say that is I know the folks in Atlanta, and they don't look the other way at this kind of misconduct. So it's I don't know. When I read it, I was just a little bit thinking there's something more to this.
Always at a disadvantage with these. We've never got the full story.
I know it. But certainly the one comment that is in the headlines, and you hate to kind of, because it's once you get to this point and you put a certain connotation on this comment, then it's very hard to defend. But the chief is reported to have said in a classroom in front of other people, "I want to put icing all over you," and
I believe in front of another officer too.
Exactly, and everyone laughed, and again, she ended up leaving the academy. She felt like she needed some leave. Now, here's the other side of this. She suffered some sort of a panic attack, which that can be caused by a lot of things, but certainly it could be caused by being sexually harassed and sexually assaulted and treated the way that she had. She suffered a panic attack. She went for medical evaluation. They recommended she take 2 weeks off. Then she sought an additional 6 weeks of leave under the Family Medical Leave Act. And then at that point, she was terminated. Now, I thought it was interesting, and it's unfortunate Brad's not here too, because Brad has been doing a class on the FMLA. But I think it's interesting that they raised the FMLA. You have to be employed by the same employer for 12 months before you're eligible. I'm sorry.
Plus a minimum number of hours.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think she would have been over the hours, but she certainly wasn't over the year. So why she would seek leave under the Family Medical Leave Act? And again, I don't know if Georgia has sort of a state law statute that's the equivalent of the FMLA. Here in Rhode Island, we do, but it still requires that you have been employed for a year. But she sought leave under the FMLA, and then they washed her out. Well, if she's still in the academy, I mean, you can't take 8 weeks off and complete the academy.
Right.
Unless
something catastrophic has happened, you broke your leg in a car crash or something. But even there,
well, then we'll see you in the next academy.
Right, exactly. You got to get into the next class.
But I mean, you can't miss 8 weeks. And again, I think it's really a long training period, because if she started in August of 22, she wasn't terminated until June, and that's when she sought the leave. And apparently there's some question that if they had given her the leave, it would have gotten her to the 1 year, which, bottom line is, I think the telling point of this complaint is that they did not include an FMLA count in the complaint. So the attorney realized there was no FMLA claim here. But certainly alleging sexual harassment. There was no race discrimination claim here. Both of the individuals involved in this were African American, so there was no race claim included. It was just strictly a sexual harassment claim. So, and one count at that.
Certainly an uncomfortable situation to be in there if you're another recruit or the other officer that was there.
Yeah. You know, I was lecturing last week to the North American Fire Training Directors Association, and one of the points we looked at the data. One of the most likely ways a fire department is going to be sued is sexual harassment, followed by race discrimination. And we talked about the length of time that we train our trainers to be good trainers, and we don't put much of an emphasis on the HR aspect of dealing with, you know, some of the HR issues. We want them proficient in training our firefighters, whether it's EMS, ventilation, hose, ladders, you know, forcible entry. We want them proficient there. But the HR part of it is where we're having a problem. And, you know, just another case to kind of put an exclamation point on that handling some of these types of issues. And, you know, what do you do when you have somebody who is a senior instructor? He's been there, you know, if he's in his 70s and he started in his 20s, he's been there, you know, 50 years or so. You know, how do you?
But you've talked about this before with your own brother and the training that he went through in the military to be an instructor.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily you got to be technically competent in your skills, but there's all these other things that you need to be. And, you know, certainly you don't want to be putting somebody through a drill yard and then they collapse because, you know, you didn't give them enough breaks. It's too hot. You didn't give them enough water. And, you know, you have that part, but you have the HR part, which I think is another area where we just, you know, as long as you're a 1041 instructor and you're a good firefighter, you're good to teach. And I think this, you know, there's another part to it.
But knowing a skill and being able to teach that skill are two different things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like you said, like again, to mention your brother, you can't just watch Full Metal Jacket and figure, okay, this is how I'm going to treat my recruits the way the DI does, and, you know, take that approach. It doesn't work. You know, you need to be taught to instruct. And I know in a police department, industrial instructor development school, what we call IDS, was a very sought after program to be sent to.
How long was that?
That was 3 weeks.
3 weeks. And did you get into the HR part of things? Did they go over that?
At that point, no, I'm going back over 20 years.
Right.
When I went through it, and it was actually run through the local community college. It was a 3 college credit course. And it was more about lesson plans and drawing up your lesson plans and the environment to teach in, you know, the barriers to instruction, you know, how people learn, things like that. And it really was it's a very intense class. And you make, on your very first day, you have to make a presentation. You make presentations every day almost, and you're videotaped. And I'm dating myself with videotape, but then the class critiques, you critique everybody else in the class on your performance. And a lot of it is being taught to think on your feet, and simple things like having 2 copies of everything in case you drop one on the floor, you don't have to bend over and pick it all up, you know. And I see a lot of that is missing. How many times have you seen officers try to conduct a class next to a fire engine that's running and nobody can hear a thing? Yeah. Well, why can't we just turn it off? You know, simple things. So
yeah, we have some pretty good programs on operational training, like exactly like you suggest, our 1041 level 1, level 2 programs. But I think, like, I guess what concerns me here is that lieutenant, and I've got to believe there were other people, other instructors in the room when this particular chief made some of the comments, and that have they been trained that, look, whether the person's an admiral, a five-star general, a five-bugle fire chief. When things like that, there needs to be some sort of way of reeling the instructor in and holding them accountable.
If you're that lieutenant, at that moment, your career flashes before your eyes because it's about to go bye-bye. And like you said, it doesn't matter if that person's an admiral. You need to be able to say to him, can we speak outside immediately? You've got a room full of witnesses, potentially.
Yeah.
You're on stage.
Right. You know what, like if it was one-on-one comments, now there was some of the allegations here were one-on-one that were arguably off duty. Okay. But the things that took place in the classroom, assuming that the allegations were corroborated, they're troubling, and with the icing all over you being probably the most damning. But again, are the instructors aware of the consequences? Are there any consequences? Have they been trained in how to handle these types of things? Because I'll tell you, it's tough as a junior officer to call to task somebody.
You've got such a disparity in rank. You've got a lieutenant, you've got a senior chief. Yeah. We don't know how many bugles he's got on his collar, but you've got a problem right there. How comfortable is that lieutenant going to be saying, hey, chief, we have to talk? But take it one step further. Now you're dealing with recruits. Mm-hmm. You've got such a huge gap now between a recruit and a chief. Yeah. What person, what recourse does that person have?
Right. Absolutely.
And even the worst instructor in the world is going to be viewed as a god by a new recruit until the recruit figures out this person doesn't know what they're doing. You've got that disparity that can't be ignored. Yeah. Well, it's changed. The bottom line in all of this is it's changed. It's changed in the fire service. It's changed in the police service, and the approach has to be different.
Certainly. Well, again, getting back to something I said a little earlier as well, the fact that she made the complaint and neither the head of the academy or the HR person that she spoke to did anything is not consistent with the Atlanta Fire Department that I know. I've got friends that work there. I've done training with a lot of their investigators, and that is not consistent with how they tend to operate.
I find it hard to believe that any HR person would hang up on an employee calling with a complaint.
Right.
Worst
especially
case
a complaint
was,
like this.
Yeah. Right. I mean, worst case scenario is I can't talk to you right now. Give me a phone number. I'll call you back in 20 minutes.
Right.
But
so
I find it hard to believe that it would be ignored completely.
Yeah, agreed.